The immigration debate continued on Capitol Hill Tuesday, where senators are hoping to find a compromise before DACA protections are scheduled to end. That's March 5th. There are a number of proposals being debated in the Senate. Republicans are pushing their Secure and Succeed Act. It mirrors the White House's proposal with a path to citizenship for 1.8 million immigrants, along with funding for a border wall and major restrictions on legal immigration. GOP leaders say that it is the most likely to become law.
The president's framework bill is not an opening bid for negotiations. It's a best and final offer. The White House took ideas from a lot of different proposals that have floated around for 5.5 months, and it put those into a coherent, logical package. This president's framework bill is the only bill that has a chance not just to pass the Senate with 60 votes, but actually become a law. And that's what we want. We don't want to pass a bill. We want to pass a law.
Another bipartisan proposal, this one comes from Senators John McCain and Chris Coons, is also on the table. It's a bit narrower in scope than the president's plan. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer doesn't expect either plan to get the support that it needs.
So our suggestion is simple. Let's start off with a vote on the president's proposal to address DACA, as well as the bipartisan Coons-McCain proposal. Our text is ready to go. I'm told now that the Republicans should have text relatively soon, and we can bring them to the floor and have a vote. That will tell us sort of the bounds. I don't think either of them will get large bipartisan support, but it will give us an idea of the parameters and can set us moving.
Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill, and she joins me now. Nancy, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tried to start the debate with an amendment. It was proposed by Pennsylvania Republican Senator Pat Toomey. It was quickly shut down by Democrats. What happened?
Well, Democrats say that this amendment that he wanted to use to start off the debate really has nothing to do with the issue at hand, which is DACA, or those so-called dreamers, young people who were brought to this country illegally as children. Instead, this was an amendment aimed at cracking down on so-called sanctuary cities. Democrats said not only is that amendment not going to pass, but it is going to poison the debate. They said Republicans are just using this as an excuse to make them take politically difficult votes. Republicans, on the other hand, said, hey, this has everything to do with cracking down on illegal immigration, and you know, it's our choice what we want to use as legislation to sort of begin what is supposed to be several days worth of amendments that sort of run the gamut. And I asked the Senate's Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, why start with this Toomey amendment? Why not start with something like the Cornyn-Cotton amendment? This is a DACA plan that is pretty much modeled on the White House plan. It has those 4 pillars that the White House has called for. And he said, Rena, thanks for the advice, but this is how we intend to do it. And if Democrats don't like it, then we'll just wait until tomorrow. And so it looks like that is what's going to happen, that votes will now take place on Wednesday at the earliest, which is problematic because as of right now, it's hard to see what could get 60 votes. And you've already got the Senate's Republican leader on record saying they are only going to debate this week. If they can't come up with something, they're not going to stay on this topic for weeks and weeks trying to get to 60.
You mentioned Senator Tom Cotton. We heard from him just a few moments ago. Are his expectations correct? Can the Secure and Succeed bill actually get the support it needs from Democrats?
I don't, because what their bill does, and it's simply reflecting the White House plan, is crack down pretty aggressively on family-based immigration. This is the legal immigration that takes place when someone comes to this country legally. They can then sponsor a family member, and not just a child or a spouse, but a brother or a sister or a parent. And what this bill would do would be to crack down on that in such a way that Democrats say you would end up eliminating about half of legal immigration every year. They say that that is a big problem, particularly when you're talking about what should be a more narrowly focused bill dealing with the dreamer population. So as of right now, that kind of plan has no Democratic support, and there are even some Republicans who worry about cutting legal immigration so drastically.
So when you look at the bipartisan bill from Senators Coons and McCain, do you think that the minority leader is correct in saying that neither that proposal or the Secure and Succeed bill are likely to pass?
There are a lot of lawmakers right now, Rena, who are pretty pessimistic, who don't believe that, first of all, there is the requisite bipartisanship for everyone to jump together and support something overwhelmingly. And also they feel that none of the plans that have been put forth so far have enough backing from both Democrats and Republicans to get to 60 votes. But one of the wild cards here is the order in which these amendments are put up for a vote. And the thinking is that as some of these amendments begin to fall one after the other, there might be a greater realization among both sides that, look, there's not much left to choose from. We've got to pick, one of these fallback amendments. And that's why you've seen a lot of wheeling and dealing around everybody with a proposal wanting to go last. No one seems to want to go first. They don't want to be the first amendment to fail and move on to something else. They want to be sort of the last amendment standing. So we've gotten into this situation now where there were no votes on Monday, no votes on Tuesday. You recall at the beginning of this process, Leader McConnell said he wants 1,000 flowers to bloom, and this is going to be an open, freewheeling process. But everyone here on Capitol Hill is still waiting to see those flowers peek up out of the ground.
It's a great line, Nancy. Flowers blooming. I like that one. I want to ask you, though, we also know of looking at all these other proposals, Arizona Republican Senator Flake is set to unveil his own. What do we know about his?
It's sort of a light version of the White House plan. And so, we were talking about legal immigration, family-based immigration. His bill would still allow for reducing family-based immigration, so it only applies to, say, sponsoring a minor child or a spouse. But he would then take all those visas that are no longer being used and plow those back into the system, either to reduce a backlog that exists, a 10-year backlog among people who have already applied for visas, or to boost the number of employment-based visas that are given out. So his plan would say, we're not going to reduce the amount of people who are allowed into this country every year. We're simply going to hand those visas out and prioritize differently. That's going to be something that's a little more palatable to Democrats than the Cotton plan. The question is still, will they go for something that makes a fundamental change to the way that family-based immigration has always worked? Or will they see that as more problematic in the long run than, will they be willing to trade that essentially for legalization for the Dreamers? That's what we still don't know. They haven't said on the record yet which way they would go if it came to a vote on the Flake Amendment.
On that topic of Dreamers, Nancy, on Tuesday, a federal judge in New York ruled that the government has to restart DACA's deportation amnesty and actually accept new applications and renewals. How do you think this is going to affect the DACA debate, the Dreamer debate?
It just makes things more confusing because no one up here seems to know anymore whether the program really does end on March 5th and whether all of these people who are DACA recipients will truly be vulnerable at that point, or whether they will continue to have some protections past that date. This is now another major court decision, and depending on who you ask, it either will lengthen the time that these people receive those protections or it won't. And we haven't gotten a lot of really good, strong guidance from the Department of Homeland Security. And frankly, it's in both sides' interest to argue that court cases like this one don't create more protections for Dreamers, because everyone wants to get to a permanent solution. And often what we find here on Capitol Hill is that lawmakers need a deadline hanging over their heads in order to get things done. So if suddenly the prevailing sentiment around here was that, oh, well, actually now it looks like we've got, 6 more months to deal with this, you can be sure that nothing would happen for 6 more months.
Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cortez. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.